Ontario Tech U students, back again here this week with Louise Stiles, your outreach worker. And I'm joined this week, I'm super excited about this. The lovely Jay Hillier is joining me here. Jay is the founder of Relating in Recovery, and he has kindly agreed this week to share, his story, his path, to addiction, through addiction, what's it like both sides, all those burning questions that you may have or that you don't have yet, but this information might hit you at the right time, for sure when you're ready. So Jay, I'm going to turn right over to you and just introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself, and let's get started here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jay. And as Louise, thank you so much for asking me to come on. Any opportunity we can get to get more information out and help people, then, the better it's going to be for everyone, right? So this is an amazing platform that you're working with, and thank you for all that you do, right? So I am the founder of Relating in Recovery, and I'll get to that. Quite honestly, if you'd asked me about 4 years ago, would I have a clothing line and a podcast and a company and a grassroots movement, for that matter, that facilitates change in people's lives, I would have been, you're crazy. I just want to go a day without a drink, right?
Yeah.
And it's evolved into this miraculous little grassroots movement here in Southern Ontario. So, So I would you like me to tell you a little bit how it all transpired?
Yeah, walk us through from the start, because I think, in-house, a lot of our students, right, we've got some, various ages, but students coming in, maybe first time away from home, dabbling with substances, kind of, not sure, is it right? Is it wrong? What's the right amount? What's the wrong amount? And so could you, share your story, man, and just give us some insight.
Well, look, and there's another ripple to this wave, right? I mean, we are in a bizarre climate, right? So we're forced to isolate more, and we're forced to, and I know the students on campus and the students abroad and the students around, I know it's no different, right? I'm actually a student. I'm a student at one of your sister colleges in Scarborough, at Centennial. And I was there prior to COVID hitting. So therefore I had a little bit of the taste of the in-person stuff. It was my first experience in school. I'm a grade 9 dropout, right? So for me to go to college was a miracle in my story. But I also had the transition to this whole online learning platform, which was difficult for a guy like me, being a mature student, having a lot, I wasn't as tech savvy as some of my classmates. Let's put it that way. I'd never been introduced to Word, or I didn't know what a PowerPoint presentation was, and all these things. So learning aspect was difficult. But when I can't really associate it to so much with college, because I was clean. I was fortunate to be clean and sober. But in high school, in around grade 9 is when I finished high school. I was introduced to drugs and alcohol in the summer between grade 8 and grade 9. Now, most people, I think, are introduced in high school somewhere in that window, that 4-year window, where we're experimenting, right? And we're trying things. But for a lot of us, we have, our brains are wired differently. 2021 shows us with science of the brain and with CT scans, we can see different areas of our brain lighting up differently, and different amounts of, we can measure serotonin levels, we can measure dopamine, we can see where it stems from, versus people that have an illness of addiction and alcoholism versus people who don't. And there's a lot of people who can pick up a drink in the summer of grade 9, or go out to the local dance or whatever they're doing, the beach party, and they can drink and they can have a good time, maybe make a fool of themselves, but they can stop on their own on their own willpower, on their own accord, right? For a lot of us, that's not the case. For a lot of us, we put this substance into our body, certain areas of my brain lights up differently, and now I need more, and I have this incredible compulsion to drink and to use drugs, and then I have this allergy that manifests itself and it says I need more. And I'll go to any length, Louise, any length to get it. I try to equate it to needing oxygen, right? It almost feels like I need it to survive. And if that's the case, my Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the security tells me, if I need something to survive, I'm going to do whatever it takes to survive. And that unfortunately it results in a lot of devastation and a lot of hurt, and a lot of pain, right? For myself, but more prevalent is for everyone else in my life, right? Everyone that I come into contact with. So for me, I picked up the drink in that summer, and I know right away that there was something different about me. My friends would drink and they would stop, or even the mature friends would even have the ability to say, I can't drink and drive. Or I would have friends that would wake up the next morning and they'd feel sick, but that would be it. They'd feel fine by lunch after breakfast, but I'm still drinking. And
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why I was like, I just couldn't stop drinking. And I was like, what's, and I actually honestly believed there was something wrong with my friends. I never once thought there was
Yeah.
something wrong. Like, why aren't you guys drinking with me? It's Saturday. We partied last night, but it's Saturday. That was last night. Today's a new day. And I would have this belief that that was normal, but I didn't have any education. I didn't have any knowledge, right? I wasn't armed with any facts that, you know, hey, that maybe there's something wrong here, right? And so, you know, as I got a little bit older and this sort of behavior continued, right? And I would turn to drugs. I would turn to all kinds of different drugs. But early on in my life, there were party drugs, right? Drugs that would help me, make me feel like I could dance better, make me feel a little braver with the women, make me feel a little better about myself, right? There were these sort of external drugs, right? Like the uppers, I think people would more refer to them as. And it gave me energy, right? It gave me energy to do more things, right? I was like, I can get more, I can cram more into my life in this short period of time. So being a young person at that time, and as I started to grow, I noticed that some of my friends and my peers, they weren't so interested in partying all the time. They wanted to study, right? Or they wanted to get jobs, and they wanted to go to the movies, right? And don't get me wrong, I would do these things, but I would never do them without a drink or a drug in my system, right? But as students might be aware, right? Like if they're finding themselves in a position where they're just they're always thinking about drinking, or using some sort of a drug to help stimulate themselves, then the truth is that you might want to ask some serious questions. You might want to start asking yourself some hard, honest questions, because what I have right now it's a disease of addiction and alcoholism, and it's very progressive. It was very, very progressive, and in my life, it was aggressively progressive. So it starts out really minor, like I would miss like hockey practice, or I would not return a phone call. Like it was started out really minor, and I
Yeah.
didn't, but as it went on, I would miss. I'd get a part-time job, and I'll date myself here at Bargain Harold's, and
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
I would stop showing up for work a little bit here and there, and I accumulated the nickname Monday because you'd never see me on a Monday. And this was early on though, because I would always be carried over from the weekend. So usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'd manage through, but I was still young and I was still living at home, and I hadn't burned any bridges. And somewhere in that journey though, again, I would notice that my friends weren't drinking. And so I was around 18 or 19 years old after I'd left high school, because I couldn't live the way I was living and still function as a student. Um, and I would always tell myself these lies, and because I have this illness that was in my head, I would believe my lies, and there lies my dilemma, right? So I would have this belief that all these things I was telling myself were true, and then I would find myself, in the most bizarre circumstances, that like people's homes where I didn't know these people, and I was drinking with them, and then I'd find myself on the west end of the city, and I'm drinking with people and drugging with people I don't know them, and I just thought this was okay. Like I was just I never really processed it as an action. I just processed it as um I'm young and I'm just having fun. And I never really realized that there was going to be any serious consequences to my actions, until there were consequences that were so bad, and the disease had gripped me so tight that I had nowhere to turn. And around 19, 20 years old, I turned to crime. I didn't have any other outlets, and I turned to crime, and I started knocking off credit unions, and I started getting involved in other very sordid illegal activities that were like, looking back, disgusting and shameful, right? But me, it was more like I just had to get that next drink or drug, and like I said earlier, like I would have done anything to get it, and so I did. I did anything I could to get it, and then, you know, around later on, around uh, 25, 26 years old, I'd had a few children. I'd had a couple with a couple different ladies. I'd moved across the country a few times. I'd moved across the province, always trying to find some sort of cure to what potentially is wrong with me, not realizing that I had a disease, not realizing that the DSM-5 registers as what I have as a mental health concern that's like needs to be addressed with young people long before it gets to the point where we've lost everything or perhaps our lives. And but I had no idea. This was foreign to me, and I'm not going to blame the era that I grew up in. However, we are privy to a lot more information today, and this gives us, a lot more opportunity to reach younger people and get this facts out there. But this this wasn't my case, so I ended up going to a treatment center. I had closed mind. I didn't think alcoholism was my problem. I didn't think drug addiction was my problem. I thought you were all my problems. Society was my problems. The overwork, the stress from my homework, the girl I was dating, my parents. Like I always blamed everything external because again, I had no idea that the problem was within inside of my thinking. You people outside of me, like you people would look at me and you would see this guy that was wasted, right? Wasted, belligerent, loud, aggressive, unruly, and high, right? And high on whatever substance at that point I could get. And that's what you saw. But what I saw was what was more not what I saw, but what I felt was this pain, this stuff inside of me that I couldn't fill, this void that was like it was like unbelievably it's impossible to describe. It's like trying to describe the taste of a banana. Like go for it. Like try and describe the taste of a banana. You can give the color, you can do the texture, but try and describe the taste. So it was like really difficult to try and comprehend how I felt like that I needed these things. But I really did, right? And I went to any extent, and so I mean, what had happened was you guys would see me as this drunk guy, but I would feel this void. So when I drank the alcohol and I did the drugs, all of a sudden I felt like I thought you felt. All right. So therefore now we were kind of on the same page because I never felt like I measured up to you. I never felt like I was good enough. I never felt that I could manage the stresses. I never felt this stuff. Right. And I didn't have any tools to do it because my the way I was wired was always like there's got to be some sort of easier way. Like I always wanted to take that small easier loop, there's got to be. But there wasn't for me. So I would just keep on drinking and keep on drugging. And so I want to try and keep an eye on the time, but the reality is that around 30 years old, I went back to treatment. And now I'd had another child with another lady, and I just kept on trying to fix everything by addition, right? Like I'm gonna move to Niagara Falls because that'll solve the problem. But there lies the problem, Louise. I went with me, right? I went wherever I went, and therefore, and if I'm the problem, but I didn't know it, there stems my issue, right? And so I ended up in this position where I was about 30 years old, and I had my son's no, my older daughter's mother, she had made a 12-step phone call and to one of these fellowships that were trying to help people, and like, and so this guy took me out to this meeting, and I was introduced to one of the many different facets of recovery that are out there. Looking back now, I mean, there's tons today, smart recovery, all kinds of things, cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, I mean, there's so many options, right? But I didn't know any of this stuff. And quite frankly, I don't even know how much I wanted it. But I know that somewhere along the way, I had not only continued to drink and drug, and it became obviously a very daily thing, morning, noon, night, morning, noon, and night. I was also very sick physically. I was 117 pounds. I was yellow, green, gray on occasion. I would drink in the bathroom at home because my body would reject the booze. My mind would say I need more, so I'd pour it in, but my body would immediately throw it up. And this was going on for years. And I was dying. I was dying. And to be honest with you, I was okay with that. Because I couldn't stop. And then it came to a point where, I heard these cliches like, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired many, many years before. But there came to a point where I couldn't go a day without drinking, and I couldn't go a day without drinking. Stuck. And at that point, things really took a turn for the worse. And I ended up going back into treatment. I am the product of 5 treatment centers. I am the product of hundreds of attempts to get sober and get clean off drugs from so many different ways. And Louise, it just wasn't in the cards for me. I used to hear people say, you have to be honest with yourself, and I couldn't. I didn't know where to start, right? So finally, I had an experience, where they had taken. I had a little boy. His name was Noah, and Noah. It was a big part of my journey, right? But he was living in fear, right? He was sucking his thumb and wetting the beds, and he was, having some real tough time socially, and he couldn't grasp little concepts. He had learning disability. He was really, really challenged, and I knew that was all part and parcel. Now I know that was all part and parcel to the disease that I was battling, but at the time, I still didn't realize that I had any part to play in this. And I was almost resentful against other people for telling me the truth about my son.
Yeah.
But I had an experience where in 2013, where he wasn't safe with me. He wasn't safe with me, but yet I had part of my illness is behaviors, and one of my behaviors consists of a really sick but inflated ego. And I would tell myself that it's how I would justify everything. I would behave differently. So behave in such a manner that where selfish self-centeredness, no question, but I would behave in such a way that it was almost like the world owed me something. So when you didn't do it my way, I was completely offended. And when I got offended, I lashed out, and I got angry. And my way to punish the world was to punish myself. And I would continue to drink and drug. I just didn't know that's how I was doing it. And so they ended up taking my son away from me in that summer, and then things got really dark really quick, and I was stuck in suicidal ideology, and I was there was some serious attempts on my life, and I just couldn't because I didn't know that I was sick. I just thought I was really, really screwed up, and I had nothing left, and I had nowhere to turn. And this is what I love about this platform today, is it gives an opportunity to let a young person know there is so many ways, so many places to turn. There's so much help, but I didn't know this. I was stuck in this vision of like, oh, it's just as all I got, which was nothing. And so I was fortunate to have an experience that actually where I came out of that sickening time in my life, and I came to out of a coma in a hospital in Oshawa, and after 9 days in a coma, and I'm going to tell you, Louise, there's no way I was ever going to drink again. They talk, students here might listen today, and they'll be like, they've heard about things like you got to hit your rock bottom. The truth is some of us, like, our rock bottoms are death. I suppose I would suggest you stop digging. Because the reality is it's progressive. It's gonna come, but hopefully you can live long enough to get there. And and I was digging. And so that day, when I came out of the coma, I was never gonna drink again, ever going to drink again. And 11 days after getting released from the hospital, I found myself washing my socks in a creek. I don't know how I got there. I can't believe it. Here we are again. What is absolutely wrong with me? So from that point on, then I went out, I drank, and I would drug, and then I would get clean for 3-4 days. And then I have this weird belief that once it's because it's in my head, I would tell myself after like the second or third day, and if you're listening to this and you can identify with this, after the second or third day, all of a sudden you start to feel better, right? I might have a sandwich or a grilled cheese or some soup in my belly, and all of a sudden, I might have taken a shower. I might not smell so bad for a minute. You know, all of a sudden my girlfriend that was so mad at me is like talking to me for a minute. And my friends are saying, hey, that was crazy last weekend. Hey, maybe we should take it a little lighter this week. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. That kind of stuff. Now I've regenerated in my mind and I actually tell myself, you know what? It really wasn't that bad. And yet it was. It was so bad. It was so bad that I can't connect how bad it was with how I'm feeling now. You know, and if I have 17,500 thoughts a day, but I have over a million unconscious thoughts, like I'm moving my hands right now, but my brain is moving my hands, but I'm not consciously saying, brain, move my hands, right? Like right now, my heart's beating. I'm not the beat; it's just beating as my brain's telling it to. So I have this unconscious separation from how I'm feeling and how I'm thinking, and it would trap me over and over and over again, and I'd find myself back out, back out, back out every time I felt a little better. And so fortunately, I found that I had an experience Halloween in 2016 where I had I'd gone through treatment a few times and I had an experience. My son, I was lost on my driveway or on my street with my son trick or treating, and we had and he had brought me. He had to bring me home because I was lost, geographically lost, clearly mentally lost, but geographically I couldn't find my home 2 or 3 doors down. And he takes my hand and he says, "Come with me, Daddy." He was 7 years old, and I used to detox a lot on my own because I'd gone through medical detox a lot. And if you are identifying like me, I would encourage you to go medical detox. But I was because I was having seizures, a lot of seizures. My body couldn't handle the sudden influx of or all the booze and then no booze, and I would have medical emergencies as a result. But I stopped going to medical detoxes and I would detox at home. So here I am prepping for this because I used to have it so often that I would prep. And my son said something to me. He looked me in my face and he said, "You know, Daddy, it makes me sad when you're sick." And and for the first time in my life, Louise, it wasn't like my mom, my sister, my dad, everybody in my life that cared about me, all these women, my other children, they all told me all these years, what I'm doing to them, what I'm causing them, the pain that I'm putting them through. But none of it felt. It was all just lip service. None of it could come inside to cause me to have a shift because I wanted to quit drinking. I wanted to stop doing drugs, but I couldn't. And nobody could understand that. There is no choice in this matter. There's an old theory about choice theory, but then we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you have a gun to my head, yeah, I probably won't drink because my first primal instinct is to survive.
Yeah.
But take away that gun, guess what the first thing I'm doing is? Drinking. And it's because I need that to survive. And that's how the chemistry in my brain and the neurotransmitters fire. So but this is knowledge that I didn't have. This is stuff I wasn't armed with. And after he said that, what happened is I actually felt his pain as opposed to hearing his pain. And there was something about it that made me cause something inside of me that said, we got to try something different. I was just, I mean, that wasn't a conscious thought. It was an unconscious thought, but I knew I was what I like to call, I was given a gift of desperation. I'd never been more desperate in my life to get well. And I tried all these different things. I'd read hundreds of books and all these counselors and all these things, and none of it was able to help me, right? So I ended up going to back to one of these other programs, the local programs, where I met a guy who took me through a program that actually changed my life, right? He introduced me to something that that was life changing, right? There's different fellowships out there, like Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters, Sex Anonymous, you name it. It's all over the place, right? And I was introduced to one of these fellowships that allowed me to get honest with myself for the first time ever. But I needed direction, right? And because what I learned was because of the stuff in my brain, because that's where my illness lays. I never had the ability to take direction, but more importantly, to take the truth, right? So I had today, right? If my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, Jay, you know what? We need you to when you're running this group, maybe you could AB, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, absolutely, thank you." But in my life, when somebody would say, "Hey, we need you to do this in order for you to get well," I'd have my backup. I'd be like, "Oh no, that's only because I did this and I'm really tired, or this is happening in my life. I'm really stressed." And I would always have these excuses. But now I need to be able to look at you when you tell me something, like Louise, if you came and say, Jay, I've noticed your behavior was funny lately. I noticed that
Mhm.
you're acting a little, I've known you and you're acting withdrawn. I need to be like, really? Tell me more, because I
Mhm.
need to know that. I need that information. Because if you don't give me that information, then I'm going to keep on operating up here in my head, and that's a dangerous neighborhood up there. I don't want to be in there alone. I need you to come to call me out and tell me my truth.
Yeah.
So that's what this gentleman did. He brought me to this journey of truth, really, truth and honesty about myself. And I became willing to do whatever he asked me to do, and I had to take a real hard look at myself. And as a result of what he took me through, I had a really strong experience um, that altered they call it a complete psychic change, right? It altered the way
Mhm.
I think. And the reality is, Louise, is how I think determines how I feel, right? I can decide at any given moment how I want to feel, right? And I realized that there's mental illness. I realized that I know the plight of depression and anxiety, right? And I know that there's a lot of medical support in these areas that can be incredible, that are incredibly necessary in order
Mhm.
to heal properly, right? And I know there's lots of trauma informed care out there, and there's a lot of great programs in a variety of different settings with the CBT and the way technology's allowed us to be to get access to tons of more information and all these things. Um, but this is what worked for me. And so when that happened, I had this complete psychic change, and I have an alteration of how I look at my life today. And so what happened was, as I continued to get honest with myself, I started to learn a whole lot about myself, and some of it I actually turns out I actually liked. And up until that point in my
Mhm.
life, I didn't know if I liked anything about my life, but it turns out I had some gifts, and one of those gifts was I was creative and imaginative and assertive and communicative. And those skills I didn't know that I had in my life. And once I was learning about them, I started to go through different things about in my life. So I'll fast forward to about a year without a drink or a drug. I learned a lot about myself. There was a ton of cool experiences. Um, and I share much more about the specifics and when I talk in fellowship type environments. But right now, and when I say fellowships, I'm referring to like some of the 12-step programs or
Yeah.
even cognitive stuff. Like I've spoke on different panels um, for uh, for different treatment centers, etc.
Yeah.
But for this setting, I'll fast forward and I had buried my mother in sobriety. And of course, the world would be thinking like, oh no, he's going to go out, he's going to go
Mhm.
drink. And I can see that being a commonplace. And then, and if you're young and you're thinking and you're trying to figure out a way to live a life of sobriety and abstain from drugs and these things and external things so dramatic that happen, like burying a parent or, a heartbreak, which could be just so painful and different things along those lines, you know, there's no problem in the world that a good stiff drink or a drug can't make worse, right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of what my thinking. So, when I buried my mom, there was a fear that from everyone else, but I didn't have that fear. As a matter of fact, my resolve to stay sober got stronger, and so I started to build this life, right? I started to build this life
Mhm.
for me that was going to be that I was about to see unfold right before my own eyes. I was missing my mom on an August of 2019. She'd been gone about 7-8 months, and I was really just missing her. Now, if you've buried a parent, I don't know if you have, but I like, for instance, I can't identify with a couple of friends of mine who've actually buried their children. I can't
Oh,
identify with them. I can't even begin to imagine what that
mhm.
pain is like. But I can be there for them and be supportive. It's the best I can. Now, I kind of felt that way when I was burying my mom. Like a couple of my friends had their parents still, and they were like, and I love these people. I love these men and women in my life. They were so beautiful and so loving and so helpful.
Mhm.
But at the same time, they couldn't identify with what I was feeling because I didn't see it coming. I didn't know mom wasn't sick and all these things. So I just felt like I wanted to connect with other people who would understand. So I started a little Facebook group, just a little Facebook group, real small little thing.
Yeah.
And I called it relating in recovery. And it was literally born out of the idea of connecting other people who were grieving the loss of their parents. And a lot of people don't realize this. And
I didn't know that at
yeah,
all.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It started out because I was missing mom on a Saturday afternoon. So I invited a couple people who I knew had buried their parents, and then I invited a few other friends because they were just supportive friends. And you know, it's became a really, within like a day or two, there was like, I'd posted 3 or 4 videos, and there had been a bunch of great little positive affirmation type things. And so next thing you know, there's another 10, 20 people joined. I didn't know 5 of them. And then those people invited 5 or 10 people. And because of the climate that I live in, I live in a very addictions in recovery, so I should say recovery
Mhm.
bubble. It's like all recovery, left, right, up, down, in the middle.
Yeah.
It evolved into a lot of people coming in for recovery. And of course, the name was recovery. So it sort of took on a life of its own as far as its purpose. But I always stuck to my guns that this wasn't strictly for addictions. It was always about any challenge you find yourself battling, whether it's grief, whether
Mhm.
it's depression or anxiety, whether you're struggling with some sort of any stresses in your life, a loved one who's in addiction, some sort of lean on Al-Anon type of idea.
Mhm.
But for the most part, it became about recovery from drugs and alcohol. But it that you know gambling, love is an addiction. Cell phones are proud cell phone addiction. If you've watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, social
Mhm.
media is a serious concern. And there's a lot of these things that are out there, like thousands of things, right? And especially for someone like me who externally, like when I got sober, the first thing I did was start getting instant gratification by buying stuff. I would get an immediate good feeling by buying a new jacket, whether I wanted it or not. But then 2 days later, it's hanging up and that feeling's gone, and I need something else, right? And,
Yeah.
uh, and, and food is another one that people turn to quite often, right? Food becomes,
Mhm.
they get so much gratification out of a chocolate bar and a bag of chips, a bowl of ice cream, a big plate of spaghetti, and a hamburger, and next thing you know, they're ill, and and this is a thing. So relating and recovery isn't about cocaine and fentanyl and heroin and opiates and alcohol, and it's not limited to that. It's any challenge, it's any sort of recovery, anything you're recovering from. You know, the medical conditions, like anything that you need support for, you can access into this Facebook group, which is where it started. Um, Now that's where it started. But so
Mhm.
what happened is this thing really blew up, and it's sort of like it sort of took on its own identity. I know my name's attached to it, but quite frankly, relating in recovery is relating in recovery. Like it's sort of evolved into this really powerful place where people go and get help. And it's remarkable the amount of support and love that this environment
Yeah.
has allowed these people. So what happened is this, it really was around March of 2020 when COVID shut down, when the government shut down on, the first initial lockdown, when all the sports were canceled and all these different things were given. And all of a sudden, relating and recovery just blew up, and it became the go-to for a lot of people. And so we realized early on that we needed to access, we need to get, because there was a lot you could see, we could tangibly see, and I'd get hundreds of private messages, and people were really suffering, you know,
Mhm.
and they needed more than what this Facebook group was offering. So we started a nightly 10 o'clock meeting that is relating in recovery. It's not a 12-step fellowship of any sort.
Yeah.
And we call it, we use some literature from different various stuff, but we've kept it more so as like a jumping off platform for you to come there, connect, and then find where you got to go next, right? And that seemed to be what we've watched happen and unfold. And I've watched miracles and miracles happen in this room.
Yeah.
Lots of recovery, lots of men and women finding connection and hope and support and joy from the stuff that I've seen on that group. But one night I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there, and um after the meeting, and I had so much to say, and I'm talking to Dustin. I call him the co-founder because he's always been the anchor. I'm the balloon, right? And he's the anchor. He reels me in, because if it was up to me, quite honestly, we'd already have 90 branches of this thing, and it'd be
Yeah.
I, I need his levelness, right? I'm a little high energy, but he he said we'd have these really in deep conversations, beautiful, powerful conversations about recovery. And one day I said, we should start recording these things. They could be helpful to someone. And he says, that'd be amazing. And without getting to all the specifics, within no time the podcast was born. And the podcast, Relating in Recovery, everything's under the same name, was we my brother-in-law happens to have a studio. He's been a musician forever. And he recorded us. We recorded a bunch. We started having guests on from all over, directors of Alpha House and clinical specialists from Renaissance, and all these amazing guests on, like amazing guests. And they had such valuable information and such an incredible gift to be able to take their mess and turn it into a message, and then take this information and then share it with the rest of the world. And we were just, at the time when we were recording this thing, honestly, we were just like hoping that maybe we could help a few more people, right? Just do a little bit more. Well, my daughter had been missing for 2 years. She was had missing persons reports out on her. Fentanyl was her drug of choice, so I was convinced I was going to bury my daughter. I would have a lot of nights where I would cry myself to sleep. This is in recovery, and so she had been in a room in Welland, Ontario, intravenous drug using at the time, and somehow, some way, that podcast ended up on a speaker in the room she was in.
It's
and
unbelievable.
and she said, she was sitting there and she says, that's my dad. And she had this powerful moment where after all this time, she'd been living in abandoned cars and laundromats and 2 winters on the streets, and she reached out. And without getting to all that specifics, just to let you know, she's 5 months clean and sober today and living her best life, right?
Miracle, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that podcast ended up, I remember at the time thinking, well, maybe that was the whole reason behind me doing the podcast, was just so the universe could connect me with my daughter. But as a result, what happened is we ended up with over 21,000 streamerships in South Africa. We ended up, our second biggest market was Florida. Like, my circle is Southern Ontario. I'm based out of Oshawa, Ontario. My circle is Niagara Falls to, like, it's here. And yet we're connecting with these people all over the world. And this thing started to really grow legs, and we ended up getting sponsored by Crave. I got sponsored by Google. There's something special about a letter coming in your mailbox with a Google letterhead on it. It's an interesting concept, but it happened. And and then as a result of that, you started seeing our ads and our logo, which we ended up branding our copy, doing everything we had to protect our stuff. And we ended up seeing our brand, I'm on Pinterest and I'm watching a YouTube video, and all of a sudden an ad comes up, and I'm like, oh, that's my company. And I had no vision of this. This wasn't by design. This was happening organically. Like, I didn't really put in any effort into this. I just was doing what I thought was right. And this, so like I said, when I say Relating Recovery is a movement, it's because it just moves. Like, I didn't actually do anything. I just put my best foot, next foot, my next foot in front of the other, and then and then came from a place of kindness and love, and I wanted to stay sober. So I felt like if I continued to do this service, I'd stay out of that neighborhood I was talking about earlier, right? So then I ended up, so this thing was taken off, but all of a sudden we needed now to create some revenue. I mean, we can't, none of this stuff was free, right? Like, RSS feeds and all these things cost money, but ultimately we wanted to make a bigger difference in the world, and we didn't know where to start. And so I had an idea that we should sell hoodies, right? And I was like, we need to sell some hoodies, and that can create a revenue stream that would allow us to pay for these other fees that are that are cropping up. And because I'm a student and I got 5 children and I come from a life of addiction, what kind of nest egg do you think I got? So I was like, this is like, I'm like, I was literally, still eating Kraft Dinner and Pop-Tarts for dinner. But I really knew there was an opportunity to do something. And I didn't know quite frankly, where this was actually going. And now, so that happened with the hoodies, and the hoodies turned into t-shirts, and it turned into toques, and then it turned into more, different stuff. And all of a sudden we were getting support from areas we never knew. And then I would sit down, in my life, I got my job switched. I ended up working up at a little treatment center I'm an addictions counselor up in the north of Whitby. And we've got relating and recovery information packages in the hands of 4 different Ontario treatment centers now, where we are part of their exit strategy. They direct them to the Facebook group. They direct them to the podcast. They direct them to the to more information. So what happened was, though, when my daughter did reach out, this is where the real tangible change happens in my mind. When my daughter reached out, I ended up trying to look up detox in St. Catharines, Ontario. Now, all I got was like juice cleansers in Iowa. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there was just a spider web of information. I had no access to any information. I'm like, how do I have all this huge circle on the group? I got all these people in my life. I'm working at a treatment center, and I can't get my own daughter exact information on a detox in St. Catharines when I need it. And time is of the essence. When students or people in our lives want this information, they need to be able to get it now. You don't want to start searching. And then you'll get false information, and you'll get people that are looking to make money. And the truth of the matter is that it's dangerous. And I wanted to be, and so what had happened is I uncovered a need. I uncovered a very serious need, which is a safe space, and to get a hub, if you will, of information, so you can get everything you need in one spot and safely know where to go. And so I thought, we've already got this platform. We've already got this incredible build of support. We've already got all these other outlets that we can use to drive information out there to get people to go to the website. So I built a website. I built a website called Relating and Recovery. And it's a hub of information. It does have the links to the podcast. It has the links for the clothing to help support the maintenance of all this stuff, with the objective, as we move this thing into a grassroots charity through the Canadian government. Our designs are on paying for people to get into treatment privately, because right now the waiting period in COVID right now, for instance, well, I won't give any specifics of any agencies, but we're looking at October and November. If I called today and wanted OHIP to pay for my treatment, I'm looking at October and November. And if I'm running the streets and I'm on fentanyl or my drug of choice, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter my circumstances. If I want to get well now and I want to go through OHIP, because most people at this stage of when they get to the point where they're ready for treatment and desperate enough for treatment and their backs against the wall, most people don't have $17,000 laying around.
No, that's right.
Like, if I had $17,000 laying around when I was trying to get sober, I wouldn't probably be getting sober. Let's get realistic. I would have to lose that first.
Well, and let me ask you, Jay, while you're on that subject, right? So for our students, some of our students in house, they might be thinking, well, I kind of understand, what's being said here. I might have an issue, I might not. When is the right time to think about treatment? Is there a right time to think about treatment? Like, I know you said, don't stop cold turkey necessarily if this is a daily use thing. What not best practices, but what could you speak to on that, on, treatment versus no treatment?
Look, there's an old adage that if you can control your drinking, or if you can control your drug use, you might not be wired like me, right? So, that's the first thing, is to understand, like, if you're my thinking is, if you're even contemplating treatment, you probably need treatment, right? If you want to stop and you can't stop, I suggest you reach out and you access these resources that are out there for treatment. There's so much information and help that's available to us when we go to treatment that we don't even know exists. So what I would suggest is, if you can't stop on your own, because a lot of people can, Louise, right? A lot of people can, but if you can't, and you find yourself, you want to and you can't, And then you go to the website and reach out to one of these treatment centers that are on there, and ask the pertinent questions. At least go through the process of the assessment. There's an assessment stage with every treatment center. They will call you and ask you the questions that you need to, in order to see if you even are that the type of person that would be, necessarily benefiting from that type of a treatment center setting, right? Not
Mhm.
everybody would be in that same boat, but a lot of people definitely are. Yeah,
Yeah, and I
yeah,
mean, I've, through my work, and I'm sure through your work and just through life, you chat to individuals, some of the younger ones saying, well, yeah, I can get carried away, or yeah, I go on binges, and yeah, but then I kind of go back to normal. But then, I definitely followed up with another binge the next weekend. Like, would you say is that a red flag? Is that something that someone should, start taking the self ask questionnaires? Like, what's your take on that?
look, if you go out on a binge, if you go out and start drinking Friday, and then on Sunday morning you're full of regret, despair, shame, you have periods of the weekend you don't remember, and these things are happening to you, and you don't want to, and you mean it when you say, I'm not doing this again, but you find yourself doing it again the next weekend. These are red flags. These are very much red flags. We need to get honest with ourselves as soon as we can. Out of hand, right? Getting this place where this progressive disease gets its grip on you, and then you find yourself in your 40s, in a treatment center.
Yeah.
And the reality is it doesn't need to be there. It doesn't need to get that far, right? There's an opportunity here that for us to get the information out to the younger generations to say, look, and it's not uncool to get sober in your 20s anymore. As a matter of fact, the
Mhm.
uncool is to be making a fool of yourself in your 20s now, right? I mean, I understand the climate and the eras changed and everything's different now, but you know, look, if you think, even if you even have an inkling of an issue, a belief that you may have an issue, reach out and reach out to come into Relating in Recovery, put down your question in the group, read the answers, and see where you want to go. If someone has ever brought this to your attention and said maybe you need to look at your drinking, well, then maybe you need to look at your drinking. Or maybe your drug use is affecting your schoolwork. Well, then maybe you need to look at that. Just because we don't want to hear things doesn't mean what we're hearing is wrong, right? And
Mhm.
and that's just the reality, right? Sometimes it hurts to hear the truth, and but we need that truth. And if you're wired like me, you'll justify, minimize, trivialize, and then make excuses for. And then and then of course you'll end up in that second binge the next weekend over, right? And then the
Mhm.
weekend after that, that'll carry over till Monday, and all of a sudden you miss an exam, and then all of a sudden you're late for a class, and you lose your drive and your motive, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's so watching for those behaviors, right? And I think, like, I'm definitely someone who can, there's no middle gears. I got first gear, I got, fifth gear, and there's not much in between, right? And I think, and I love that you said relating in recovery is open for anybody, right? Whether it be
Yeah.
workaholism, right? Or
Yes. Yes.
like what they call like the respectable addictions. It's like, well, look at me, man. I'm working every day. Look how hard I work. But, I never see my kids. I never, have time for anybody else. But it's respectable, right? Because I'm not using a substance.
Right.
Um, and I love that, because it's those behavioral addictions, like you were saying, the gambling, right? All that stuff. I
Mhm.
love that students can bring any of that stuff to relating and recovery. And like, there's no,
Absolutely.
yeah, there's no
Yeah.
wrong place to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an incredibly powerful movement that allows people to really connect and really identify with each other and understand, and most importantly, Louise, is to realize you're not alone, right? You don't even
Yeah.
know that some of the times we don't even realize that we've disconnected because of the things we like, right? We think we like, right?
Mhm.
So for instance, like you mentioned the work, right? Well, people don't go to jail because they work too much, right? But
That's right.
they can lose their relationships, and they can lose their identity, and they can lose things in their lives where there are consequences to it, right? Same thing with ice cream. Like I turned to ice cream in recovery, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to lose my job because I eat too much ice cream. I'm not going to go to jail again because of ice cream. But I'll tell you, I don't have to worry about my health, right? Diabetes and my weight and how it affects me. It makes me feel about myself and all these things that's prevalent, right? It carries weight. And so these are you nailed it when you mentioned that's the behaviors, right? And that's what relating and recovery will allow you to do, allow you to find that your people, you'll find your people, and even if your people are people that are addicted into different substances, it's the same thing. We're still filling a void, right? We're still trying to fix something that doesn't feel right, and therefore we have to get to the core truth about it. And what am I missing in my life? Well, a lot of times, quite frankly, is the connection, and that's where
Mhm.
relating and recovery does come in, right? It provides that hope and it provides the connection. So it gives you that community that we need, right?
And what do you think?
Like-mindedness.
That's it, right? And so for students who are going to watch this later, they're interested, maybe feeling a bit shy or thinking, I don't really want to put myself out there, or, do I have to be on join meetings? Do I have to go live? Like, I mean, are there people my age? What, is there going to be anyone that looks like me here? What's the experience in relating and recovery in terms of, who's there? What's the expectation?
Okay, so in relating recovery, I'm going to throw it right out there. The age group is everyone. Like, we have
Yep.
young people, we have 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, 30s to mid 30s, late 30s, 40s, all the way up. Um, I'm probably what you would consider an old timer. My God, that sounded so strange. But anyhow, it's just now that I just shake that off. Let me shake that off.
Yeah,
But
get rid.
we have we've had even in COVID, right? We do a lot of fundraising things. We've connected with several organizations, and to done some different fundraising stuff that's been fun, right? We connected with Renaissance as far as the 5K Scotiabank waterfront walk last summer, and we have things coming up down the pipelines, and we had a barbecue out in Havelock, Ontario, big giant baseball and barbecue, and but now this summer we've got designs on, we were still warming up. So we've got some designs on some big fun events, big summits, big barbecues, big, lots of different things, right? A charity 5K recovery based scavenger hunt, all kinds of goodies, right? And this is stuff that we've started to create with the reality of COVID in place, so that would all be stuff that we can do even in other than a stay-at-home order, but outside of complete lockdown, we have the ability to do this safely, social distancing in place, and still have a lot of fun, and
Mhm.
a lot of fun, and with there's organizations out there. I play in a recovery hockey league. There's all kinds of different social events that go on monthly for young people in recovery, for whether it be their mental health or their addiction issues, the bowling and glow in the dark laser tag, like all kinds of goodies. And this stuff has been going on for years, but people don't know it exists, right? And so
Yeah.
relating and recovery is really about connecting all that to all that. Our mantra from the start was connection and hope, connection and hope, connection and hope. And we
Mhm.
believe that through and through, because what that does is it allows us, hopefully, if I can connect the right people together, and then they have a chance to reclaim their lives, and perhaps perhaps change the trajectory of their life before their life even becomes unmanageable. And like,
Yeah.
what a beautiful opportunity that would be, right? Like, I have no regrets in my life, but you better believe if I had somebody help me when I was in my 19, 20 years old, if they could help me see what my life was going to be, there's a good chance I might have made a few different changes early on, right? I'm not
Mhm.
saying that's the case, but it certainly isn't off the table, right?
Yeah. Yeah, just not the availability. I mean, we're so blessed now, right? With access to everything can be online, right? Even during a pandemic. And I mean, what about those? Because I know I chat to students who say, you know what, like I don't want to commit to anything. Like I don't want to, jump into something and then, I changed my mind, or I jumped into something and I changed my mind and now I'm embarrassed, that
Mm.
I kind of gone back. Like, is that, what could you say? What could you say about that?
I have over 20, 30 kicks at this can before I found sobriety. But, I don't think it's uncommon to think that, that especially young people, but even myself, you know, we change our minds, right? We start to
Mhm.
think differently. Like, look, if you try it and it's not for you and you go back to how you were living and you don't like that, you try it again and you go back to the way you're living, that's look, the reality is I have one life to live. How do I want to live it? And until I know how I want to live it, I'm going to keep on trying different things, and that's going to be kind of the case when you're young and you're not sure, if this is for me or this is not for me. There's no first of all, with relating and recovery, and if you wanted to come in, like, you could come in through the back door in relating and recovery and just watch.
Yeah.
You could watch, follow on the Facebook group, or listen to the podcast, or get through our Instagram, and whatever the case may be. You come to the nightly review meetings and just keep your video off. It's the Zoom platform and any of these
Mhm.
things, right? And you could do that in complete anonymity of anyone ever knowing. And
Yeah.
you can get your information, and you can try to do these things the best of your ability on your own, because you may not be wired like me. You may be able to control yourself, above and beyond, the level that I could not. And great if you can, fantastic.
Yeah.
But if you find that you keep on stopping, and you going back and stopping, you going back, and you can't, and you want it, well, that's where we come in as well. Like, so you've got this opportunity to go explore, dip your toe in the water, see if you get used to it, see if you want to dive in. If you dive in and you find that it's too cold, get out of the dry off, do what you got to
Mhm.
do, and when you're ready, jump back in again. I mean, there is no timeline on this. There's no commitments to this. You'll hear in these types of scenarios along in your life, you'll hear things like, one day at a time, you
Yeah.
know, and what that really means to a guy like me today is I want to live my life for today. I want to live it one day at a time. I don't want to get too wrapped up in long, like, I can never drink again for the rest of my life. Don't worry about that. All I want to worry about is today. And
Yeah.
I'm not worried about 6 months from now. What am I going to do when May 24 comes? Oh, what to worry about? We'll deal with May 24 when May 24, right? Let's just
Yeah.
deal with, let's deal with, whatever today is, April 6th, right? Like, and that's kind of been a way that's allowed me to live my life. And I've watched it happen to my daughters as well, and hundreds and hundreds of my friends. It just seems to be, it simplifies it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, and I know you were saying, if there was something like this when you were younger. So is there, it might have been different. It might not, but this may be exactly, this is the journey you're meant to be on. But
Mhm.
so if you could sort of take a minute, think back to, if someone could have said something that might have made a difference, or what information might have come your way, if you could say to you then, as you can say it today, is there some pearl of wisdom, or is there something that could have made a difference?
I feel like I've kind of touched on it when I mentioned earlier about, like, if I was in a position to practice some controlled drinking, if I could stop. And if I
Right.
had been armed with the information that I'm given now, and and I realized at 20 that I couldn't stop, I didn't realize that was a problem. I didn't even realize that it was that I couldn't stop, because I wasn't making any attempts to stop. So if someone had said to me, maybe at 20, said, "Look, I'm going to challenge you, Jake. Why don't you try and stop drinking after 3 drinks, on a Friday? Don't drink on a Saturday. Don't drink on a Sunday. Have 3 drinks on Monday night after hockey. Don't drink again till Friday, and then have 3 drinks. And if you
Right.
can do that without your mind going and, losing, all having being, your things that happen to you, fantastic. Now, had someone said that to me and I had tried, I can tell you there's no way I would have succeeded. And
Mhm.
had that been the case, then maybe, just maybe, I would have been able to be open-minded enough to listen to more information, right? Because I didn't have the understanding at that time that there was anything wrong with me. I just thought I was just drinking it. I thought it was, like I said earlier, I thought it was something wrong with them.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard that before, right? It's sort of like, non-alcoholics don't have to control their drinking, right?
Right.
Like you said before, right? Once you have to start to implicate, or imply control or use control, you're sort of, you're somewhere else potentially,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, any other pearls of wisdom? I'm just watching the time here. Um, and I'm just wondering, any pearls of wisdom, or anything you want to leave our students with, anything at all?
Well, I just want to remind everyone that you're not, again, this isn't about just about alcoholism and drug addiction. This is about, you know, relating and recovery. I'm referring to is about connecting you
Mhm.
with people that may or may not be able to identify with, but at least if you know that there's a place for you to go, so you know that you're not alone, and that there will be somebody who feels exactly the same way that you do. Yeah, I would just like to let everyone know that there's no judgment in relating and recovery, because we've all I opened up this conversation today with you, Louise, with some pretty um you know pretty vulnerable truths about myself, and I did that as a way to help the students realize that, like, we've all been through stuff, and we've all done stuff that may cause us to cringe at our behaviors when we look back
Mhm.
at it, but it is not insurmountable. It is not something that I need to carry with me for the rest of my life, right? I know that there's a lot of things that I'd like to put down in my life, and I'll leave the students and anyone else that listens to this with a little story, um, about these two monks, and they're walking along a river bank, right? And they see this. There's a bit of a raging area where the water's really rough, and they can't really cross safely, but they're gonna go for it. But they look over, they see this lady, and she's got these two baskets and all this stuff, and she's got to cross the river, and she's not gonna be able to do it safely at all. So the older monk looks down at the younger monk, and he looks back at the older monk, and he looks over at the woman, and he walks over and he scoops up this woman, and he walks across the river, and he puts her down on the other side of the riverbank. And the little monk, he in his head, he's like, he's got a he's got a vow never to touch a woman. There he is, all touching a woman. I can't believe he touched a woman, and his head's just spinning. So these two go on their way. They're walking for about an hour through the desert. There's not a word was said, and they're walking inside. And the younger monk's going, I still can't believe he touched a woman. I can't believe he touched a woman. And right when his head's about to blow up, right when his head's about to pop his shoulders, he says, my brother, I must ask you, I need to know. You have vows never to touch a woman, yet there you are, touching a woman. How could you touch a woman? And the older monk looks at the younger monk and he says, my brother, I picked up that woman on one side of the riverbank, and I carried her through the raging waters, and I put her down on the other side. Why are you still carrying her?
Hmm.
So it was this realistic truth, is that we don't need to bear this cross and carry it on our own and
Right.
carry this stuff around with us. We need to put it down. Well, where do we put it down? You put it down with like-minded people in relating and recovery. You put it
Yes.
down with people that you can trust.
Word. Like that was the perfect story to end with. Honestly, Jay, like I am beyond grateful to you. I know our students will be too. And I know we're going to throw all of the information, websites, ways to reach out, Facebook, all the different media
Absolutely.
outlets, so that students
Great.
can, reach out. And, and if it's not for the student themselves, maybe someone they love, they're looking for some
Amen.
support. I know that's all there too. So for any of you out there who, this may not be, your personal journey, but you're walking alongside someone else, and you need that support for you, or you've got questions about how you can best help them, relating in recovery, reach out. That's you don't have to be alone, right? We don't have to do this alone, and like Jay said, it's one day at a time, right?
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Louise, for having me. It was
No
a lot of
worries.
fun.
Thank you again. Bye guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.